Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode of Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler,
I'm Tim.
I'm Lauren.
and we got some guests with us today. We got Derrick from Nerf Hurder Comics, and we've got Chris from Beardy Weirdy. And
Hello.
today we're doing kind of a special episode that's a little hard to do, but we wanted to make sure we did it just to talk about a great guy who is no longer with us, who was on the show a couple times, and that we all knew, Mr. Larry Allen. So, Tim, why don't you talk a little bit about Larry?
Uh, Gladly. So, as Tyler said, this is you know, a special show. It's kind of a commemorative to Larry. I know that we all have different uh, ex- uh memories and thoughts and of Larry. He was a great guy. I met Larry about 8 years ago. Um, at Charlotte Comic Con, and yeah, it was about 8 years ago. About 9 years ago, about 9 or 8 years ago, I had just seen Larry around a few times. At his table, he was always set up at the same spot, if I remember correctly, and I remember being introduced to him by Nick Franks. We all know Nick. Larry had some earlier issues of Incredible Hulk that I was interested in, and Nick was like, he was he was like, well, you want me to introduce him to you? And I was like, okay, yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I was set up there with Nick, helping him out at the time, and I met Larry that way, and we got to talking, and from that point on, every time I had seen him at Dave's show, I always was sure to stop off at his table, and we always talked about Silver Age books. That was Larry's thing, Silver and Golden Age books. He would love those books. Mine's was more Silver Age Hulk and Spider-Man, a little bit of Fantastic Four, but from over time, it kind of our relationship kind of progressed as we got into chasing collectibles, got started, and we became vendors. Larry was one of the first people to allow us into his show to set up, and I remember contacting him, and he's like, "Oh, you want to set up my show?" I said, "Oh yeah, 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 most definitely." I mean, I was really excited at that opportunity. Um, we had even stayed at the hotel that Larry would host his show at in Clemens, and we went to dinner that night. I remember, the first time that we did a show, we went to dinner that night at a Mexican restaurant that was nearby that Larry recommended. And we had talked a number of times. We had him on the show here, um, a few times, and there was, pretty much anything that I needed, in regards to comic books or shows. Larry would always advise me. A lot of times, even before I could even say anything or would say anything, Larry would be like, what's a good show? He'd come to my table, or he would always be excited about like some great deal that he just got on some books. He'd be like, I just purchased this here and this here, and they gave me such a good deal. And or he would be talking about like a sale that he just did, and he was really fair, with his pricing all the time. Um, he always would do his best to, people want to sell him any kind of collections or anything to, you know, pay them, as a fair price. And as I had just said, number of shows that Larry helped me get into, that he had introduced me to other promoters. Um, usually online, he would introduce me to them or recommend me to them, and I'd get into to certain shows that way. So I mean, he was always there, and every time he came to our table, or every time I had seen him at the show, Larry, I think the best thing I could say about Larry is that he would always make you feel like you know like you were like the most important person in front of him right now.
Mm.
So I mean, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, but just to that's the best way I can sum up Larry. He always made you feel like you were like the most important person there. Um, uh, Derek, um, you want to go next?
Sure, sure. So, I've been seeing Larry, around when I first started setting up at shows. So I kind of knew who he was before I actually met him. I think I remember the first time I actually like really talked to him was I think at Charlotte Comic Con as well, when he came to my booth and was just looking at my wall and commenting me on the books that I had, the prices that I had on them, and just giving good conversation. Larry throughout the years has became a really good friend of mine. One of the things that I always liked about him, and Tim, you just said something about yourself, was how excited he would get over something. Like anytime he would get a book that he really liked, he would go around and show it off, and he would always be real excited about it. And I always really liked that about him because it would always get me in a better mood. And I'm gonna miss that. But
yeah, he was genuinely interested in the stuff that he was selling,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and he would always be interested in what I had. He's even bought a lot of stuff from me one time. I remember one time, I don't remember the exact book, but I remember it was a cartoony Golden Age book that I had posted on Facebook, and another friend of mine had made a comment, who would want something like that? And then I assured my friend at the time, I said, somebody's going to buy it. Sure enough, like the next day I was at a show and Larry bought it. So I hold that story close because my friend that made that comment is no longer with us as well. So now both of the people in that story are not with us. So
gotcha. All right.
Good memory.
so
Lauren?
yeah. So
I'm sorry, Derek.
it's something simple, but it's probably a memory that I will always have. I'll never forget it.
I think it's a lot of those things that I guess this applies to anybody. A lot of those things that seem simple in the moment, that when something like this happens, they become a lot more meaningful.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I got to know Larry through doing shows and stuff. As once, like Tim said, when we became vendors, he popped up on our on Chasing Collectibles, and I remember the first time we interviewed him, it took us a hot minute to get started because he was trying to figure out the iPad stuff. And one thing that really sticks out to me is like he always called himself Crazy Larry at his shows because he was really proud of the fact that every hour he would give away graded comics. And when I look back I was watching one of our interviews with him, and he always talked about how much he just loved talking about comics and wanting to get more people into comics. And he loved that. It didn't matter to him if he was making money doing it. If you think about it, when you're giving away comics, you're inherently losing money. And so he didn't care about that. He would do these giveaways. I remember at the last show, he'd have the giveaway for kids, and he's like, if you who can tell me who a member of the Avengers is? And it's like, of course somebody can tell you that. It was like the most basic question, but just to make sure a kid felt good about themselves and then got the comic. And who knows, that could have, sparked a lifetime of collecting, for all we know. And I remember back in August, him and I we talked about the Beatles. He knows I like them, and we were discussing. I saw a book on his on the rack that featured the Beatles on it. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. We were talking about it, and walked off. Didn't really think about it anymore. He comes over to our booth, and he's like, Rob and I were talking, and we wanted to give you this. And so he gave me this comic with the Beatles on it, and it's pretty neat. I like it. What's funny enough is the Beatles only show up for like a panel, but they're on the cover. Um, so that's the main point of it. But he didn't have to do that. He was just, that kind of guy. And, like you said, Derek, that's a simple story. But now that I always, when I think about Larry, I think about crazy Larry giving away comics and caring about, preserving our comic book community.
Yep.
That's awesome.
That is cool, Tyler. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Lauren, what do you
Well,
think of?
I don't think I've known Larry around, but I don't really think that I knew him all that well until maybe a couple of years ago when we actually started doing the Chasing Collectibles shows, especially the one in Clemens. I remember that for sure. And I remember, I mean, the thing that drove me nuts and scared the garbage out of me was every time he'd blare that little horn and it's like, oh gosh, here we go. Here we go, another one, And we actually, as a group, as Chasing Collectibles, we actually won one of those books. And that was pretty cool. We got a picture taken with him, and he just like you guys have been saying, and we can say it over and over. He just loved to get people into comics and to make sure that people had a good time wherever he was, whether he was selling or doing his own show. I mean, him tooling around on his cart was just awesome. He'd come by and give you the buttons for the Carolina Vintage and the lanyards and all that cool stuff. And it was just, I remember, like Tim said, going out to dinner with him at the Mexican restaurant, just having fellowship, just hanging out with him and, talking about everything, whether it be his past congressional or political assignments that he took part in, just all that stuff that he would just gift us with stories, and it's always a great thing to learn or hear stories from people that that have been in a certain business that you're also in, and can just give a bright sort of idea of what the future could be. Always wanting kids to read. Of course, if he gives away a graded comic, they're not going to read it, but mom and dad could probably break it out and give it to them. But it's just such a down-to-earth guy. I remember he would tool around at the Charlotte Comic-Con shows, and just stop by everybody's booth just to say, hey, how's it going? You doing well? Seemingly caring more about us than anything else in his own personal life, not letting anything that was going on in his personal life affect him outwardly.
Right.
It was always joy towards us, so that basically making sure that we feel good and are doing good, before saying anything about himself. I never once heard him complain about anything.
And when you say that, Lauren, it does remind me of a number of times that I've done the shows, with my daughter Emma, or with with Courtney, my wife Courtney, or with you guys, whoever was missing at the time, he would come over. He'd say like, "Oh, no Tyler today, no Lauren today." Like, where the guys? Or he would ask sometimes, is Courtney, Courtney coming, or is Courtney with you today? No, I mean, like, he actually genuinely cared, and you're hitting all the right spots about Larry too. That's just how Larry was.
And there's no way that can be taken from any of us ever.
Mhm.
Sure.
How about you, Chris? I see you
I guess
down
I'll
there in the
close with
right-hand
that, yeah.
corner.
So I met Larry in 2015 when the Charlotte Comic Con had gotten moved from Charlotte to actually, where they've been since 2015, which is in Concord, and we were next to each other. This is when my buddy Josh still lived down in North Carolina, so that was the first time that I had really met him, and we just really hit it off. Same thing with Robin and stuff. Talking about music stuff, talking about comic books. It was incredibly genuine, his interest in comic books, especially Dell stuff, Gold Key. So, I mean, from that, we never moved spots. We were always just next to each other. And he started doing my show in 2017. And we would see each other not every weekend, but almost every weekend. And of course, at this time, Larry was getting around a lot better than he was, once he, had to use the power chair and stuff. But there were too many good times. I mean, the thing I like the most about Larry, and you guys have already hit on this, is he was just a really positive person. He was in some ways like a little bit of a hype man for me, because he would always be really positive, say nice things all the time. But I mean, you guys have already said the same stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, never a bad word to say about Larry. I mean, I would do everything that I could, especially in the last few years, just so that he could do conventions, because it was something that he genuinely loved and cared about so much. But just like you guys said, at the shows that he was running, giving away those slabs and stuff, I mean, it was a selfless thing. Even like this last show that they did in Arcadia, which is, they did their Clemens show, they did their Arcadia show. It's a really small event, but they just were giving back so much. And it was honestly a really brutal, kind of bittersweet thing, because that morning he got carted off in an ambulance around 7:30 in the morning. But I mean, the event still went on and stuff. I mean, Larry was a great friend. Some ways he was like a mentor to me. I mean, he was a great guy. I mean, the last thing that he gave me, he never gave me any Beatles stuff, but he gave me a guitar, which I need to get around to like fixing it up and stuff, because it needs a little TLC. I just haven't done the time. But yeah, Larry was just, that's the thing is too, there's certain like staples in the scene, and he was one of those. So with him not around, I mean, things will definitely be different. Not necessarily for the better, but just like you guys are referencing memories and stuff, I mean, that's the best thing to hold on to. And yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of one specific thing that was like, whatever, because I mean, I had so much. Like, we would usually set up, like, if there was any show that I was going to be set up, I would try to advocate for them so that they would be close or near. So I mean, we would talk all day most of the time. So but yeah, Larry was a really close friend. He was a great guy, a staple in the scene, and the scene will not be the same without him. So it's about all I have to say. Yeah.
I can't remember. I remember the show that I don't know if I was there selling, but it was the small show in Rock Hill that Dave puts on.
Yeah.
and I don't know if it was you, Chris, but I think it might have been. I was standing at Larry's booth looking through some books. I think you were over there, and I think he gifted you with some sort of a coin. I don't know if it was you or if it was somebody else, but I was like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, it was like a silver coin of some sort. I was like, wow, he's giving that away. Wow, that's awesome.
No,
And,
he didn't give me a coin, but he did give me this Hulk 180 one, like it's a graded card. He gave that to me.
That's pretty cool.
He gave me multiple things, and other dealers I know, over the years. I mean, again, he was a pretty selfless individual. Just wanted to do it because he liked doing it.
Mhm.
So, yeah, yeah, great guy. But his wife Robin will be set up at the Charlotte Comic-Con on December 10th, which anyone that's watching this, I mean, that's a great show. Rick and Dave put that on, and I mean, that was a show. Larry didn't miss that since 2015 at that location. So
Sounds much all of us met him there too.
Right.
there you go. Yeah, that seems like a common thread between all of us, is that show was, where we met him. So, but his wife Robin will be set up, so swing by, say hey. It's supposed to be like a memorial thing up there too. We'll see how that all pans out. But yeah, December 10th.
And
It's $5 to get in. It's really cheap. It's one of the best shows in North Carolina, I think.
Yeah,
lots of comics, lots of cool stuff. Yep, we're all going to be bringing heat, so it's going to be fun for everybody. It's Christmas time. It's time to get those presents, gifts.
Heat will be good if it's a cold day.
the dad
Yes.
joke, if there ever was one. And I just, as we're wrapping up, I just want to say, as we're talking about the show and shows going forward, he's definitely gonna be missed, and I think a way that we can kind of carry on, that impact of Larry's is to, act a little crazy, as Crazy Larry would, be generous with people, be positive, and if we do that, then we keep it going forward, and Larry will always have that impact.
Yep.
Yes.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
With that, guys, this meeting is adjourned.
All right.
and that's as official as it gets, isn't it?
It sure is.
But appreciate everybody, and appreciate Larry, and Robin is in our thoughts, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody on December 10th at the Charlotte Comic-Con.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'll see y'all there.
See y'all there. Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching our tribute video to Mr. Larry Allen. He was such a great guy, and we were so blessed to know him. We're now going to show you a series of clips that come from Larry's 2 appearances on our show, Chasing Collectibles Catchup. He was on the 3rd episode ever, and also our 14th episode. And I think that these clips do a great job showing the kind of guy that he was, how humble he was, and how much he cared about the comic book community. So please enjoy these clips of Larry, and just the kind of guy that he was. So please enjoy.
Well, like I said, I collected comics for many, many years before I decided to sell some. And mostly, I guess I have to say, my wife was saying, you got to do something about them comics, because they were everywhere. They were, in every closet. They were really, really building up. And, so I decided to give it a try.
I'm sure my wife would love for me to do the same thing.
I'm sure she would.
But so just to just wondering, can you give me a sense of what the comic book industry was like back then when you started collecting?
Well, believe it or not, I don't think there was many, as you would say, Comic-Cons. but there was a comic shop on about every corner. I mean, there was comic shops everywhere, and you would see comics at the flea markets. You know, when I got into it, it was the Silver Age 12 cent. And a lot of times, you know, you go to the flea market and you could buy them for a nickel. You know, so dollar allowance every week. So you know, that don't sound like a lot now, but back then I thought I was rich because I would figure out how many comics I could buy, and you know, that's what I look forward to. True story, when they raised comics from 12 cents to 15 cents, I thought it should be a federal crime because it cut into my comic buying.
And you said you grew up in the 60s, so you were buying like Silver Age books off the rack for, you know, like you said, a dime and then 15 cents and all that. And when I see a book that I bought at cover price like 10 years ago doing really well, it kind of amazes me now. But I can't, like, how does it feel to see like books that you grew up with that are so hot now, when, you know, people are wanting to buy them, and you see them on the comic racks at shows? Like, that's got to be pretty cool to see.
It really is. It's exciting, you know, and just to see how much they're desired and what they've gotten in value. And then, you know, you think sometimes, man, I had that comic one time or another.
Yeah.
And you know, being a young kid, I wished I'd have took a little bit, when I first got started, a little better care of my comics. But I was a typical kid. I would roll it up and stick it in my back pocket.
Right. That's a common thing we heard at Nickel Spot, was people would say, you know, oh, I had this back in the day, or I left for school and then my mom threw them or gave them away. You know, that was a constant theme.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to get involved. I wanted to have what you might say a true Comic-Con. So many cons have become all about everything but comics. To me, you walk in and it's a big flea market, and you can buy jewelry, you can do all this stuff. And, you know, I know there's a place for everything and everything, but for a lot of people, it's about comics.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler.
I'm Tim.
I'm Lauren.
And with us today, we have, I think he might be our first or second returning guest ever, Mr. Larry Allen. So welcome back to Chasing Collectibles Catchup, Larry.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we know you've got an upcoming show, and we wanted to have you back on to talk about it. So welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited. We just want to say you've got a show coming up October 16th, and we want to know a little bit about it.
Okay. This is my second show at Village Inn in Clemens. You know, it's an old school Comic-Con. This time we've got a few different dealers, like Chasing Collectibles. We've mixed it up a little bit. Yeah, I know you guys are the new kids on the block, and I'm excited to have you. Also, we're going to have food trucks this time, which will be a different little element. A little bit about the venue. It's right off of I-40 on Ramada Drive. Very easy to get to. Beautiful facility. You know, if you like vintage comic books, this is definitely going to be the place to be. We have a powerhouse group of vendors coming, and we got 5 very, very good artists that are great. So, you know, you might want to plan on getting it. Our entrance, there's like 3 entrances to the facility, but the main entrance I'm going to have a sidewalk sign out there with this giant Spider-Man balloon.
Ooh.
No, it ain't going to be you, Tyler. I ain't going to tie you up. But but also the food trucks will be out there. You know, it's going to be on the 16th of October from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's $4 admission. The biggest news, I made an announcement that every hour I'm going to have a drawing for a graded comic book.
Wow.
So,
That's great.
you know, I don't think I've never heard of that in any of the cons.
No.
You know, so I think that'll be a big thing for people. I've been getting a lot of response from people on that. Also, me and my wife, Robin, have really, really, really worked hard on promoting this show, you know, in lots of different aspects and advertising. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time, and I'm glad y'all going to be a part of it. And I think you three guys will be in the Hall of Fame someday.
That'd be awesome.
Well, I know you're there's probably some lines you can't cross because you run it and all that, but I mean, I think you deserve at some point to be in there, you know? I mean, you're
Yeah.
between the Clemens, between the con that you have in Clemens and all the years you've had as vendor and then organizing the Hall of Fame. I know it might seem weird one day to write one on yourself, but I think at some point you definitely deserve the recognition, Larry.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, and you're not the first that have said that, you know, and I don't know, you know, I think there's a lot of other people deserve it more than I do, and but we're going to keep it going, and you know, just see where it takes us.
You have the humbleness of President Washington. Yeah.
Thank you. Chris Rigo, I met Chris about 6 or 7 years ago when he first time he set up at a Charlotte Comic-Con, and we became very, very good friends. Since that time, as everybody knows, my health problems have rendered me where I don't have no mobility. And my poor wife had been trying to unload because she wants to keep doing the cons for me and everything. But Chris, you know, and Josh, whenever he's there, whatever. And there's even been a couple others, you know, smashers. They jump in and they unload Robin and they load, you know, Lotus. I mean, so that goes a long ways, and that shows, you know, the type of people that we have in the comic book industry. Also, you know, I've seen a lot of good things out of comic books. I always try to make our hobby grow. I have give through the years hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comic books to kids that come through the show because I want to encourage them to read. I used to do some teaching like Mr. Tyler there. And comic books was a good way to reach some of them. And, you know, that one comic book might keep a kid from turning to drugs or something like that. Also, I go into schools and I give comic books. And I've even had last year, I had a local high school here that invited me to come and talk to their class about comic books. It was cool. And I got all sorts of questions. But it's a great comic book community out there. And, you know, I see a lot of good young people like you guys coming along, and that makes me happy.